Hello, beautiful people. You are watching CBA TV, your #1 TV station in the Horn of Africa and beyond. My name is Balogun Shekola Abdulaziz. I welcome you to your darling program. I mean, that's lovely program. You know, it's been a while. We have to, respect the holy month of Ramadan, so we, do a kind of rest for a little bit. But I promise you, henceforth is going to be like back to back. Welcome to your program, Talk to CBA. On this episode, we will be discussing extensively with my guests what the law is all about. What is constitution? Like a saying go, like whenever there is no law, there will not be sin. But if there is law, there will definitely be a constitution and there will be sin. And join me in this studio today is no other person but Dr. Amal. She happened to be the owner and the principal of AQN International Law Firm, the only international law firm in Somaliland. She's also a lecturer in many universities. Can you imagine that? Join me as I welcome my guest today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. What I just said about you is just like a little things that I know about you. I want you to introduce yourself fully to our viewers at home.
Okay, so my name is Dr. Amal Ali. I am an international lawyer here in Hargeisa. I'm also a legal academic. My educational background includes having a law degree, a master's in international and European law, and I've got a PhD in law, and the topic on that was international law. I've been an academic in the UK for many years, where I taught, researched, and did quite a bit of legal consultation. So I research, I practice, I write about the law, I teach about the law. I'm currently teaching at quite a few universities here in Hargeisa, and I'm the Dean of Law at one of them. And we opened up this international law firm here in Hargeisa because we felt it was the perfect time, considering that Somaliland is no longer just on the cusp of internationalization. I think we are internationalizing, and therefore we need reputable international law firms who can kind of help the country breach that kind of sector, inshallah. So yeah, that's...
Wow, that's fantastic. I think for the viewers at home, they will know I have a very big fish in the house today, and I believe we are going to do many justice to the issue of law and constitution. To get started, I want you to tell my viewers at home, I want to ask, why are constitution central to the legal system of a country?
Okay, so the constitution of a country is its foundation. It sets out many things. It sets out its cultural heritage, things like its symbols, its flag, and so on and so forth. It also sets out the legal framework at which the country is going to work. Is it going to be a democratic country? Is it going to have elections? How many times is it going to have elections? Is it going to have a judiciary? What are the role of the judges? Is it going to have a legislature? Who gets to make laws? And what is the procedure for making that laws? It talks about, who's the president and what are his roles. So it has something called this concept behind it called the separation of powers. It creates the institutions that we have here in Somaliland, constitutions are something used worldwide, so in any country. And it basically separates who can do what. It also includes things like a human rights charter, or what are its views on human rights. And then, for example, Somaliland says that they do follow international human rights standards, and they've got their own human rights bill. And so on and so forth. So yeah, a constitution is like the legal framework of the country, the legal and political framework of the country that any country has, and it just shows exactly in which a country can function.
Fantastic. I will just pick the next question from where you stop. You make mention of a political and legal constitution.
Yes.
So how can we differentiate these two?
Okay, so as I said earlier, constitutions have this concept called the separation of powers, which means that powers have to be separated into its relevant institutions. If all power, if one person is judge, jury, and executioner, if one person can make the law, execute the law, and is the judge, then we consider that one person to be a dictator. And then that is wrong. So there's this concept called the separation of power that says, right, Parliament makes laws, the executive oversees laws and ensures that the laws, the ministers ensures that the laws are carried out, or the ministries, and then the judiciary, they just interpret the law and they just apply it within their court. Now there's also something called the checks and checks and balances. How do we ensure that everyone just stays within their remit? Now, political and legal constitutions basically outline who checks whose balance, who checks on whose power. So for example, in a legal constitution, it's up to the judges to challenge the executives, to challenge the president and the ministers. So if they go beyond the scope of their powers, it goes to the court, and then the court says, right, you have the power to create these laws, you went beyond that, and so you're going to have to stop. So that's legal constitutions. And that happens in America, for example. They've got legal constitutions. The Supreme Court basically says, you've gone beyond the scope of your powers and you can't do that. So they put a stop to that. In political constitutions, it's done through a parliament. So if the executive goes beyond the scope of their powers, parliament, so the legislature is the one who says, hang on, you've gone beyond the scope of your powers. You're technically not allowed to do that. And so that's the difference between political and legal constitutions.
That's very good. You just made me to understand, because when we just heard political and this legal constitution, we always think they are just, but still on what you said now, they are still working in pari passu. Yeah. Now we move ahead. Let's now come down a little bit to Somaliland. Having said all what you have said, I want to ask you, how many type of law did we have in Somaliland?
Oh, Somaliland has all types of laws. We have the two different areas of law. We have the civil code and the civil law, and then the criminal law and the criminal code. So that's those two areas. Because Somaliland accepts international law, we have international law. And then we have loads of different acts that cover different parts. We have, the Investment Act, the Media Act, the Act on elections, and so on and so forth. So there are loads of different areas of law. There's the Islamic law, there's the cultural law, there's everything in Somaliland, like any other country. Every area that you can think of, there's a law and a rule behind it. Everything has sort of legal regulation. Okay,
which is very good. That means Somaliland also has every type of law.
Every type of law. Exactly, yeah. Laws can be divided into public and private. Public is about the relationship between the individual and the state. So criminal law is public law, it's a form of public law, because if I commit a crime, the state sues me and takes me to prison. But then there's also private law, the law that governs individuals. So if I hit your car and you sue me, that's private law, because I'm a private individual and you're a private individual. If my company and your company want to enter into a partnership agreement or some kind of legal contract, then that's also private law, because it's a private company and a private company.
Okay, before we go deep down into that one, I would like us to talk briefly about Somaliland Constitution and its law. Okay. Taking cognizance of your own background, how can you describe these two in this country? I mean, the Somaliland Constitution and its law.
So the Somaliland Constitution was written over 20 years ago, and at the time it went well beyond its time. Because Somaliland's a relatively new country, it could take into consideration constitutions that have developed over a long period of time. It could take into consideration constitutions from newer countries, so looking at its neighboring countries, newer countries that have emerged post-colonialism, and take stock of what they have there. So they took a look at what the international standards of a constitution are, and then they took a look and said, right, what does our culture say and what does our religion say? And this collaborative effort between the three. So Somaliland has an excellent constitution. There are certain areas of the constitutions where certain things have been mandated. That's still not happened yet, but because other countries, the UK for example, the US for example, have had 200, 300 years to develop their constitutions, I think that we are very much at a good place in time, and our constitution, the things mandated in the constitutions will develop over time.
Okay, just like what you rightly said, that the constitution we are using now, it's developed long time ago. Based on my findings, I discovered that Somaliland still uses written constitution
Yes.
up to date,
Yes.
while in some other developed country they are not. Can you explain to our viewers at home what is the legal stand on this?
Constitutions can be written, they can be unwritten, that's absolutely okay. There are just some countries whose culture is different. So for example, the UK has an unwritten constitution. So their constitution is a mix of different laws, and it means that their constitutions are flexible. They can change it. For example, when the UK made a decision in 2016 to withdraw from the European Union, that was a constitutional decision, and they did so based on a referendum. And so they were able to repeal, so get rid of the European Union Act of the European Accession Act of 1972, and basically say from this moment onwards, which I believe is this year, we are no longer part of the European Union. Written constitutions are less flexible because they are written. They are set in stone. They are fixed. So America, for example, has a written constitution just like Somaliland, and it just means that it's less flexible. It can't be changed, and so the rules of the constitution has to be foundational to the rules of the country.
That's very good. But I would like us to talk about, some people calling for amendment of this law, because even like what they said, the constitution that we're using is been there for more than a decade now. Mm-hmm. But before we talk about that, I would like us to go on a very short break now. When we come back, we'll be discussing more extensively about where and what is happening to Somaliland constitution and its law. We'll be right back.
Making documentaries is one of the most creative craft and challenging endeavors you can be involved in. It is an effective strategy to inform, persuade, educate, defend a perspective, and shed light on various issues, policies, and activities. At CBA TV, documentary production is our forte. We capture every TikTok detail of events in highest resolution to tell the story you care about, from politics to human angle, research-based content, educative and informative. We also help you project your story in a dynamic perspective that attracts the world views of the target audience, as there is no better or more powerful way to place the organization's values and achievements than to make an excellent documentary film. No doubt, our strength lies in these ventures, and we pride in many award-winning documentaries which have been earning accolades across Africa and beyond. Let's tell your story.
If you are just joining us, you are watching CBA TV, and this is your lovely program, Talk to CBA. My guest still remain our humble self, Dr. Amal. I can call her, a law guru now. And thank you and welcome again to this show.
Thank you for having me.
Before we, went on this break, we are talking about Somaliland Constitution and its law. Mm-hmm. Now, some people, some Somalilanders, they are demanding for amendment of this country constitution. Mm-hmm. As a law expert, what can you say about this?
I think legally it would be very different to change the constitution at this point. I believe that if we were to go back and we would amend the constitution, it would go through a lot of procedures that would take a long time, and it would in the long run hamper our quest for independence, because one of the things that Somaliland needs in order to be independent is to have control of its borders. It needs to have its own currency, it needs to have its and so on and so forth. So there's like lots of different rules regarding being given statehood. Now, one of the things that solidifies Somaliland's legal quest for statehood, and it meets all the requirements, is the fact that we have a legal system, a legal framework based on a constitution. Now, even though it's difficult to amend the constitution as a whole, one of the things that I've not really seen in the debate is we can interpret the constitution in a different way, or the way that we interpret it, maybe we can do so in a way in which is conducive to everyone. For example, if we look at the US, once upon a time, its constitution was in favor of slavery. It still has that same constitution. It just decided over time that we are going to interpret this way and we're going to interpret this that way. And it allowed it to sort of move forward and to develop in time through the way in which constitutions were interpreted. And so the Supreme Court had the power to say, right, this is not constitutional, that is not constitutional. So like I said, I think changing the constitution would it is a possibility, but it would take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and there's no guarantee that the changes would make the constitution better than it is now. And like I said, the Somaliland constitution at the time was ahead of its time. It was miles ahead of where Somaliland was at the time. And so we can look at how we interpret it. We can look at, what laws can we make that will allow the implementation of the constitution and focus on that, rather than open what I'd call a Pandora's box and reopen the question of, well, should we change the constitution once again? Because the constitution is a legal document that should be difficult to change. It is the skeleton of a country. It's its framework. So that's what I personally stand on that.
Okay. What I understand now is constitution is difficult to change, yes, but we may look at it in a different perspective, yes, from where we are coming from. That's very good. There has been a lot of commercial development in this country.
Yes.
I want you to let us talk about, now we have commercial and trade law,
yes,
which is in existence. So can you please tell us the difference between these two and its relevant to this region?
Okay, so the difference between commercial and trade law. So commercial law is about the provision of goods and services, for example. So it talks about the domestic private sectors, what the laws that businesses have to follow as a whole, right? And trade law talks about importing and exporting goods. If I buy goods from Ethiopia, if I buy vegetables from Ethiopia and I want to sell it in Somaliland, I have to pay tax at the border, right? And then when I sell it in Somaliland, there are certain rules that it has to follow. So that's the difference between commercial and trade law. They are interchangeable, but trade law very much focuses on goods that move over a border, so goods that are traded across countries. And yes, Somaliland's at a very exciting point. With the port in Berbera, we are internationalizing, and we are going to see much more trade, we're going to see much more international investment, and we are going to see, inshallah, our local businesses boom.
Just let me pick another very good question from that angle of Berbera Corridor. Yeah. Berbera Corridor is something we all happy to have, and its existence is a blessing to Somaliland. Mm-hmm. But what do you think can be the legal challenge? I mean, what Somaliland can face in the creation of Berbera Corridor?
If I could fix one thing, and I'm sure things are being done behind the scenes that we are just not privy to, that we just don't know about. But currently, a lot of investments being done on the infrastructure. Fixing the road from Berbera to Wachala. There's a lot being done there. But if I could fix one thing, it's to create a law that would protect local businesses, because my fear is that if we have big international conglomerates coming in and shipping or bringing in oil or whatever, or construction or whatever, or banking even, it would really affect our domestic economy. So one thing that I would take into consideration is, whenever people do come in, is taking a look and seeing, is this beneficial for our country or is it not? Maybe having a few laws at local level that will protect the small businesses, the local businesses, so that we don't have big supermarkets coming in and taking their custom. That's one of the things that I would fix. I'd continue to focus on infrastructure. And I'd continue looking at, what can we do to help the small businesses, and I'm not just talking about the supermarkets, the computer shops and so on, but I'm talking about, the women selling fruit and vegetables, the men selling coals, like the real small businesses. What can we do to protect them and to help them so that they can also benefit from the internationalization? Because one thing that could happen is that the people at the top the wealthy people, the people that are already at a good place, especially those coming in internationally, will benefit more than the local people. So I think that's one thing that I would like to see added to the legal framework. But like I said, we don't know what's happening behind closed doors. Maybe something like this has already been proposed.
Thank you very much. Since we all believe that we don't know what is happening, behind us, like you said, but we can, as legal practitioners, a legal luminary, we can, suggest, like, what are those things you think Somalilanders can do, or Somaliland can do, in order to protect its citizen from those who would like to take advantage? The port's capacity is increasing, you know. So what are those things you think we can do to, do a kind of protect our citizen from those who may take advantage of our economy? Exactly.
I mean, right now, the way that international investors kind of invest into Somaliland is they go through the investment ministry, they get a certificate of investment, and then they go to the relevant ministry. So say if they want to work in transport, they go through transport. Say they want to work in mining, they go through that particular ministry. If they want to work in education, they go through that ministry, and so on and so forth. So vetting is done at every level. So they're being vetted at the investment minister will vet them and say, right, what do you want to invest in Somaliland? What are you bringing that's good? And they have the capability to say, yes, you can come, or no, you can't. And then it goes to the experts, right? It goes to the ministry that has the expertise in the area before they get the licenses and permits. And they also will ask a series of questions. So I think the government's doing a very good job at vetting who comes in and whether what they do is to the benefit of Somaliland. And I think that should continue, and I think that's already enshrined in law.
Now let's do a kind of diverse a little bit from law and constitution. Presently, we are in political era when Somaliland is looking up to have election, in just a couple of days. As a woman, what can you say about the status of women in Somaliland politics and its decision making?
Okay, excellent. So, like we said, I'm a lawyer, so I'm going to look from it from a legal perspective, because I just don't think I have enough local knowledge to fully understand the politics, and I'm comfortable in the law. So I know that the President put forward an idea that we should have a quota so that a certain number of women are in Parliament, and so the idea behind this legally was so that when laws are being created and laws are being written, they're usually written, if they're written by a minority for the majority, it can lead to injustices that we didn't intend to have. So if I write a law, I can write the law in a way which might in the future adversely affect you in a bad way, which isn't great. Which is why the idea behind having more women and more minorities, it's not just women, it's the minority clans as well, so that their voices would be heard, and then when laws are being written and drafted and voted upon, that their viewpoint is taken into consideration. Now, I know that this was struck down because it was unconstitutional, and some people, some commentators will say that actually if you have a quota for women or a quota for people who are persons with disabilities or minority clans or whoever it is, that's in the general minority, in a way, it goes against the concept of equality, right? Because equality is treating men and women the same. If you favor women, then they're not treated the same. Now, that is the difference between equity and equality, because equity is fairness, right? And if we had a fair system, not this concept of just formal equality, but if we had a fair, equitable system, then we would say women have been excluded from the law for so many years, and so right now, this is what we need in order to get a fair society. And so I think it'd be very interesting to see where this conversation and where this debate will go. I think women in Somaliland have made a lot of headway thanks to, the activists on the ground, the local people, the local MPs, and we see the pictures of the women who have been put forward by their communities on boards across Somaliland. And I think it'd be very interesting to see where this will go. I personally think we will see more women in Parliament, but inshallah, we'll see after the election. We'll see what happens there, and we'll see where the quota debate will go to, and where we'll go with the idea of equity versus equality.
Okay, it's been wonderful speaking to you. My producer has been telling me that the time is up, but what I think we are going to do, because I've been thinking, for the viewers at home, you can see my guest is fully loaded. I think we will have to, come again for this interview. I promise you, we will not stop here because we still have a lot of things to talk about. I will talk to my producer and maybe we'll have 2 episodes of this program. But for now, we'll be rounding up this program. But before we go, Somaliland election is just right the corner.
Yes.
What advice did you have for electorate and even the candidates?
In the lead up to the elections, lots of things have been written. There's a code of conduct, there's the Election Act, there's the Electoral Commission, there's all sorts happening on the ground. So the advice that I would like to give to the electorate in general is to just go out and vote, have your voices heard, and decide who you want to be your MP and your local councillor. And for the candidates, keep doing what you're doing. We've got, in the next few days, we have your campaigning, which is going to be very interesting. It's my first time being in Somaliland during election time, so it's going to be very interesting what that looks like. I can see that a lot of hard work has been put behind the campaigning and so on and so forth. So yeah, my advice to people is to go vote, and my advice to the candidates who've put themselves forward is to just keep doing what you're doing, because this is, having fair, open, democratic elections, regular democratic elections, is going to be the thing that inshallah in the future will also help our case for independence. Like right now in the Horn of Africa, in East Africa, we are a beacon of peace and democracy, and inshallah khair, that's something that will continue in the future.
Thank you very much once again. And my viewers will be draw the curtain of this program here, but I promise you I will bring her back again so we can talk much and more about Somaliland and its development. My name is still Balogun Aziz, and you are watching your darling program, Talk to CBA. Till we meet again, same time, same station. Bye for now.